everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is criminal defense attorney Danny Rubin. Danny, thanks so much for joining me.
Brittany, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on.
Now, even years after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested, charged, and then subsequently died, there has been renewed interest in his case and calls for transparency. There are more seemingly questions than answers when it comes to this saga, and someone who people think could hold a lot of those answers is Ghislaine Maxwell, a longtime Epstein associate who, in 2021, was found guilty of heinous sex crimes, even sex crimes involving minors. She met with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche back in July. So to start off the conversation, what questions do you think she could answer? What answers does she hold? What information does she have that wasn't covered in her trial a few years back?
I think that it's important to note that when you meet with a prosecutor in the federal court system, really you're trying to get yourself out of hot water. Usually when you meet with a prosecutor, you're given some sort of immunity in talking about all the things that happened. So during her trial, it's more likely they talked about the things that the prosecutors know happened, or the things that they alleged, and that the trial was limited to what was in the indictment. It probably wouldn't be in Ms. Maxwell's interest to start talking about some of the other people that she knew that had frequented Epstein's properties, who she was affiliated with. That would probably draw the ire of those people. And at the same time, it would probably give the prosecutor more evidence with which to bury her. So I think that when they met most recently, they probably had a very frank conversation of how deep this rabbit hole went, and probably more specifically, what she could do for the president.
That's really interesting. I mean, could this put her potentially in a worse position because she was meeting with the number two at the DOJ? Or is this only in her benefit? I mean, what really does that look like?
So when you meet with the prosecutor, like I said, you get some sort of immunity agreement. You wouldn't proceed without some sort of immunity agreement, or at least some sort of proffer agreement where you're going to exchange some information and then receive some benefit from the prosecutor, either a lighter sentence or something else. It seems that the prosecutors have already demonstrated good faith by moving Ms. Maxwell from a maximum security prison to a minimum security prison in Bryant, Texas. I think that there's a lot they want to discuss. I think they've met for about 9 hours over 2 days in the last month or so. And she probably do want to know how much she knows. And like I said, again, what she can do to probably benefit this administration.
And she has been referred to Jeffrey Epstein's Madame. She has been referred to as the Bonnie to the Bonnie and Clyde when it comes to her and Epstein. So it seems like she would know a lot. And according to her attorney, she was asked about, quote, 100 different people. And apparently she didn't hold anything back. So, I mean, my question to you once again, as a defense attorney, is why would you hold those cards back in your trial? And, how much do you think she has to give them, because they did, like you said, seemingly act in good faith by moving her to a different jail?
What's a loaded question? So which would you like me to start with?
Let's start with it. Let's start with the first one, which is, why wouldn't she implicate someone else, reveal other people in that trial? Why is she holding her cards a few years later when she's meeting with the prosecutor now, or meeting with the number two at the DOJ?
Well, let's talk about the most important thing, right? And that's what's relevant. The only thing she's allowed to talk about at trial is what's pertaining to her indictment. So bringing in a boatload of other people that may not actually deal with the terms of her indictment is only going to hurt her. And even so, it's not the time to get your whole story out. It's the time to defend yourself, saying that I wasn't with these people. I didn't do what you're accusing me of. So it's actually probably the opposite of what she's doing with the prosecutor now. Additionally, when you're dealing with a trial, the judge is going to limit whatever you can bring in to whatever is salient, whatever is relevant to the subject matter. So as you said before, she's talking about a bunch of the people that no one talked about at trial. The judge would even let that in. I don't think also would have helped her, because if she's going to talk about all the things that did happen, it would kind of get in the way for defenses saying that certain things didn't happen. As you know, she talked about 100 different people and their involvement. But she made very clear, or her attorneys made very clear to single out Trump as having, quote unquote, no cause for concern, or done nothing of concern relative to her and Jeffrey Epstein. I think that this is really her trying to deal with the prosecutor. At this point, she's relegated to a 22-year sentence in a maximum security prison. She has no real hope of getting out except to trade what she knows. And now, with the Epstein case becoming very, very big in the news, it's sort of become, like, wouldn't you say, like the embodiment of corruption? I mean, everyone looks at the Jeffrey Epstein files and is trying to think to themselves, well, how deep does this go? And Maxwell seems to have that answer. And again, looking at what the administration has said recently, they've said something like, well, there are no Jeffrey Epstein files, right? There is no lists, right? First there was a list, then there's not a list. They can't find the list. Maybe they're looking at Ms. Maxwell as the list. And she seems to have a lot of information on some people that would have been on this, hypothetical list. So she's trying to take this opportunity now to trade whatever card she has in exchange, probably for either some sort of lesser deal or lesser sentence, a pardon potentially, transfer to a minimum security prison, which has already happened, probably a number of other things. It seems like there's a lot she can do for this administration.
I want to talk about that transfer because that got a lot of attention. She went from a low security Florida prison to a minimum security prison. It's been described as a cushy prison, a country club-esque prison. I mean, it's still prison, but it's one of the better ones. It's a prison camp, and it doesn't sound like the place that someone who was charged with really heinous sex crimes, including sex crimes involving minors, would go. I mean, what do you make of that move? Does that signal to you as a defense attorney that she provided really valuable information? Perhaps she snitched on someone? I mean, what does that really look like?
So before you actually give an information proffer as a client, as a defendant, you have an attorney proffer. Attorney proffers are basically the attorney having a long conversation with the prosecutors and saying, here's a preview of what you can expect my client to give you. Those proffers, by the way, can be held, whatever's gleaned in those proffers can be held against the client. So it's really important that you are able to provide some information, but you hold back enough that you're not totally giving away the farm, so to speak. But when you're giving them this proffer, you're putting your reputation on the line, showing that your client can provide this information, and that this information is going to provide some value to the prosecutor. Because the prosecutor sees no value in this proffer, then they're not going to go forward with it. So that's probably why she was moved to a minimum security prison at this point. Also because it's probably easier to access for the prosecutors. But it's probably a show of good faith that what she has is going to be well taken. We won't know for sure. I mean, we can't really know, right, what was said in between the prosecutor, the attorney, and Ms. Maxwell. But, I mean, don't you think that there's got to be something that she's given so far to lead her to be transferred somewhere which is far better than where she was before?
I mean, it's a good question, and I think a lot of people have that question my assumption would be you had to have given up something good to get to that really good prison. That is what people say, that's a great prison to be if you are in fact in prison. And as we know, there has been renewed scrutiny over the relationship between President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein, who had a 15-year or so friendship. And like you said, reports have indicated that Ghislaine Maxwell said she never saw President Trump engage in what has been described as concerning behavior. She said that during her conversations with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche in July. Do you think that negative information was good enough for her to get transferred? Or is that do you think information from those 9-hour meetings are going to just drip out?
I mean, that's a very good question. We probably won't know until that actually happens. But I think that talking about President Trump is a very good precursor, or a very um, important precursor to what we can expect her to say down the line. I think it's obviously in her best interest that even if something happened between Epstein and the president was there at one point, to leave his name out, to talk about him positively, to essentially back him to show that the corruption doesn't extend to him. Whether that's truthful or not is going to be up to the public to decide, and really up to the prosecutor to decide. It's I think that at the very least, it's a showing of good faith. And I don't know if that alone was enough from her to get her transferred to a minimum security prison, but I think it's definitely taking steps in what we can see from her going forward. I also think that depending on how hard she goes on the president, that's what her subpoena, sorry, what her hearing is going to look like. Right now, that both houses are controlled, but the House and Senate, sorry, are controlled by the Republican Party. They have the ability to grill her strenuously, completely, or to throw her a bunch of lowball questions and have her sort of monologue as to what's going on. They can also turn around and say that they think this is a giant miscarriage of justice when they're given opportunities to speak. We don't really know yet. I think that how she describes the president and her involvement with the president is going to determine how Congress deals with her and ultimately what she gets in the end.
I think that's a really interesting point. I'm curious, is she a trustworthy person right now? I mean, in the eyes of the government, or does that not really matter? Because I mean, she's been convicted of really just disgusting crimes, and especially crimes against minors. But does it matter so much of her trustworthiness or what she says about the president? Because so far she's been flattering, according to reports, to President Trump. She's saying, I never saw anything concerning. I mean, can we believe her? Can we take her at her word? Or, because we already know that she's eyeing clemency. Her attorneys have said she would welcome clemency from the president. I mean, is that her goal, and she'll say whatever she wants to get there?
I mean, I don't think it's so cut and dry. I think that she may be honest when it pertains to certain people and maybe not honest for others. She's certainly self-interested, right? I mean, she has a vested interest in not spending the next 2 decades or more in custody. The person that can guarantee her that is President Trump. He's already said that he's contemplating a pardon, potentially as a show of his good faith, that he wants to be removed from the situation and knows that she has the power to do it. Then again, if she goes and talks about his either his adversaries or other people that are unrelated to President Trump and is truthful about their involvement, she actually may be truthful about that. She actually may be forthcoming about certain people that she was involved with, that Jeffrey Epstein was involved in, but she may not necessarily be truthful about Trump. Then again, she may be. It just depends. I think we should look for, first and foremost, the fact that she is self-interested. We should look at the fact that she does have a vested interest here of not spending time in custody. But we also need to look at this thing may go very, very deep and include a great number of people, some of whom may be in Trump's orbit, some of whom may not be, or may be opposed to Trump. So I don't think we can just simply discount her honesty or veracity because she said 1 or 2 things about President Trump. I think it really remains to be seen what she is going to say, the extent to which she's going to say it, and about who she's going to say it.
And Ghislaine Maxwell is just, I mean, her position right now isn't great, right? As you said, she's in custody for 20 years. That's the better part of her life. Almost the rest of her life will be spent behind bars. She was convicted of really bad crimes. Her reputation internationally is just in the gutter right now. And I mean, probably for the rest of her life. Does she have anything to lose right now?
It's a really good question. And I think that she has probably more to gain than to lose. She's been around some very powerful people for a great many years. Those people may have certain reach at some point when she's released. They may not. It may not affect her anymore. I mean, who really knows? But I think it's really important to note that if this were a trial, this were a court of law, whatever she says about other people would be regarded as hearsay. Something that she's seen might potentially be salient, but the weight of whatever she's going to talk about is going to be diminished unless there's some third party evidence that can be discovered to support her. That's really going to be the job of every news organization after whatever she says becomes public, trying to discover whether or not what she said was honest and accurate, and if anyone can find anything else to bolster or detract from her arguments. I think that listening to her is not really going to be the entirety of the story, just because there are so many variables here that President Trump can affect directly her life going forward. And other people who are also extremely powerful and whom she may have been associated with can also affect her life either positively or negatively.
And you made a really good point by saying the Trump administration said there's no client list, but they could be looking at Ghislaine Maxwell as the client list, so to speak. Do you think then, from that perspective, that she could be the beginning domino, and then from there, there's almost a Pandora's box, and this whole thing's uncovered? There's a lot of people implicated in this sex trafficking operation, and then there's criminal investigation out of criminal investigation. I mean, I'm sure people are really hoping that happens, but as an attorney, what's the likelihood of that happening?
As I said before, what Ms. Maxwell says can be considered hearsay and certainly wouldn't have a lot of weight attached to it by itself. I think that if you're looking for any sort of criminal case to come out of this, there's got to be something more to establish probable cause before a grand jury. So again, I don't know if what she says is going to lead to some to criminal cases, and certainly whether that's going to lead to convictions. But I think what we've learned over the course of the last 5 or 10 years is that we can have a really sensational news story that shows egregious criminal behavior. But at the same time, that leads to virtually no prosecution at all of any of those people. So it'll be interesting whether this changes that, because I think that the Epstein files here, the Epstein case, really has become the embodiment of corruption in America. And whether or not the public stands for the prosecutor's office doing nothing about it, or virtually nothing about it, remains to be seen.
And I think that's why exactly that the interest in this case has not died. And in fact, calls for justice have just gotten louder and louder, calls for transparency and justice. I mean, as an attorney here, what questions do you still have, and what faith do you have that they're going to get answered?
I mean, the first question I have is, what can be substantiated? I mean, Ms. Maxwell can say whatever she wants. She can say, whoever was there, or whoever wasn't there. But if there's nothing else to back up her statements, how much can we trust her? It's going to be sensational, obviously, but I would want to know what other facts and documents she has to substantiate what she's saying. That's number one. Number two is, who else can substantiate it? If it's not documents and other evidence, who else can corroborate it? And number three, what are going to be the discrepancies between what she says and what someone else uncovers about what may or may not actually have happened? So those are the few things that I would want to see just off the top of my head. And again, as an attorney, more evidence in a case like this would be better, because we want to establish either Ms. Maxwell's credibility or her lack of credibility.
Between now and when, if at all, we see the conversation between Ghislaine Maxwell and Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, what specifically are you looking out for next?
I think that the first thing we should look out for is any sort of answer or any sort of response from this current administration. That may show where this is going to go. We may want to look out for any official statement from the prosecutor's office, from the U.S. Attorney's office. We want to look out for what the Supreme Court says about her case. We're going to want to look for what comes out in her hearing. I imagine Congress is going to want to hear from her eventually. But I imagine that the Trump administration is going to want this to go a certain way. The Epstein files have been a thorn in his side politically since the beginning of this administration. And it seems that the fervor around it is getting louder and louder. And it's something that we all agree on that we want to know more about. And it's something that so far the administration has been unwilling to share with us if they have anything on it at all. There's a possibility they've been completely honest that they have nothing to share. But I don't personally believe that, but it is possible. And seeing how that narrative changes is going to be very interesting going forward. And right now, Ms. Maxwell does not hold all the cards, and the prosecutor's office doesn't hold all the cards. So it's going to be interesting to see how they interact and the statements made by both parties moving forward.
I think that's a good point. And I know that Republicans, at least, were really loud in saying we will find exactly what happened here. We'll release the Epstein files. Then when there are Republicans in office, that is seemingly not the case right now. I know you're saying both sides don't hold the cards right now, or all of the cards rather. If you were advising Ghislaine Maxwell, would you tell her you cannot talk unless you have immunity and unless you're promised immunity? I mean, what would be beneficial? Why would she talk if she doesn't have immunity from a strategic point, do you think?
There's a certain amount of opaqueness, of trust you have to put in the prosecutor when you provide a proffer. You aren't guaranteed something up front normally, especially not before the attorney proffer. And that's exactly why I think she was moved to a minimum security facility, because while they can't promise, necessarily immunity or that she would get some sort of plea agreement or a commuted sentence as a result of her talking about her client list or whatever she has to share, I think that there was certainly a showing of good faith, like I said before, and that will go a long way. Also, the fact that there's been a back and forth between the Trump administration and her counsel saying that Trump wouldn't rule out the possibility of a pardon, and that in return, Trump didn't do anything of concern around her when he was certainly around her. I think there is sort of a give and take there. So it's very abnormal for the prosecutor's office to promise immunity, to promise a plea agreement before hearing what a client or defendant has to say. So you're looking for assurances from the other side that they're going to honor their agreement and not get something for free. Her being transferred is one of those things. Her getting a meeting with someone high in the organization is one of those things. Trump responding in kind, in person, is one of those things. And the fact is also that the administration is very interested. So you as an attorney have to feel those variables out and find what your defendant is going to do and what you'd allow your defendant to do.
I think based on this conversation that there's certainly a lot to look out for. There are signposts along the way. There's a lot to look out for. And until we get to that next biggest development, you gave us a lot to run through. And I hope that, Danny, you can come back on and join me once we either see what the conversation between Ghislaine Maxwell and Todd Blanche was, or if there's a significant development after that. Thank you so much for your insight today, your expertise. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much. It was such great being on the show. And I look forward to next time. Thank you.